Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Martha Burgess Novak, and we are live and in person today on Blog Talk Radio and also on Facebook Live. I'm so glad to talk to you. We're talking about an important subject, which is happiness. I want to talk about happiness in a large context. We're going to drill down to it over the next several weeks. And what makes us happy and what doesn't make us happy. So that's what today's show's about. I'm going to start, as always, in an odd place and end up there, though, at happiness. Dears, let's do a prayer to get us all on the same page, and then we begin. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, thank you so much for whatever we have right now. It's the starting place to design, know, and create more of you in our lives. We thank you so much, dear God, for being a God of more, for protecting us so beautifully, even though we, in our child's mind, don't think we are very protected. But we know, indeed, that we are, or we wouldn't be listening to a show like this. Thank you so much for helping us, for opening us now to see, hear, sense, and know what we need to do for ourselves to make our lives happier. And we say willingly, we know nothing. That is the you through us that knows everything. Through us and through all things you come. And we thank you. We say this prayer now in your name. Good morning. And I am going to, there we are. Guys, I said for those of you that are listening to Facebook and those of you that are listening to Blog Talk Radio, you just might want to have somewhere in the house everything on so you don't miss the show. Our speed is very slow up here in the mountains. We've got the top speed that is offered us. Unfortunately, it is not enough, but so we go down from time to time. Hopefully, we come back. But you might want to have both of them on. All right. So I said I was going to start somewhere rather odd, and here is where I want to start. I want to say there are several ways to meet a goal. The several ways depend on several factors. Number one, what the goal is, of course. Number two, what path you take to get there. Number three, what your passion and follow through is like. And number four, what your real intentions are under the conscious ones that you do know about. Your real intentions are often hidden. Now, there's a reason I'm starting here in a show called How to Be Happy in Happiness. And that is that there are different kinds of happiness, aren't there? And we all start out with it being some sort of goal. But it isn't. It is really revealing, an unveiling of who you really are, a stripping away at what wasn't needed. And I love, I don't know whether this was a quote of Michelangelo or something. I remember said at one time, he chipped away at the marble that wasn't needed to reveal his beautiful statues. He said they were in the marble. I don't know of a better way to say that about your potential and mine. It's there, as is our unconditional lovingness and who we really are, quite authentically. Hello, all of you. Kat, Angela, and Lisa, we're so glad to have you with us today. So we're needing to strip off some of these things to be who we really are. And in that, happy Sunday to you too, Lisa. In that, we find that we truly are happy with who we are. Wow. What an amazing thing, because while we're working from that egoic child's mind that tells us Oh, all sorts of things. Oh, hello, Beth. Um, uh, while we're working from an egoic child's mind, we never feel good enough. We never feel like we do the right things. And we aren't at deep peace with ourselves. True happiness, in my book, is revealing the essential. At least that's the place to start in finding happiness, because it's a never-ending thing when you're cooperating. Now, I've seen through the years a lot of people begin all sorts of therapies and start to feel better and quit. They become happier than they've ever been, and they're afraid to lose it once they've found it. And I do want you to know that's still working from the egoic child's mind, as you well know by now. The egoic child's mind being the fear-based self, the highest mind being the love-based self. I know in my own journey, I was a different sort of person. I think many of you are, too. When I started all the umpteenth years ago, I started working on myself. I was more, at one point, I should say, because I started for the wrong reasons, but they quickly became the right reasons because I started. I started because I wanted to be a better actor, director, blah, 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 right? All egoic stuff. But they quickly became the right reasons when I realized that this was an investment in myself. And I realized, without even knowing it, that I was more like, and the movie came along after, of course, the James Earl Jones character in Field of Dreams. I don't mean to spoil this for you if you haven't seen the movie. It's quite the good movie. You should see it. There's this cornfield. All sorts of magical things happen in this field. They've cleared by this cornfield. But at one point, James Earl Jones says, I don't know what's in that cornfield, but I'm going to find out. And I guess maybe I've been like the cat that has a lot of curiosity all my life. I always want to know what's in that cornfield. So when I started this journey, again, several years into it, I realized I don't know where this is going, but I'm going there. It was a calling that I had deep in me. I now know what the name of it is, consciousness, but it would have meant nothing to me when I started the journey. I didn't know what that word really meant. I don't think any of us can really explain that word, but we can inspire you, hopefully, to go on your own journey and see. And that's the reason I do this. I was quite a different person back in the old days. I wanted to be so many things in life. It was based on the fact that I was insecure. We all come out of our childhoods insecure. There are many of them that any of us that don't. We all come out, if not with insecurity out and out, with a distorted version of ourselves in some way. So there was something about me, though. I followed an inner urge. And to follow it, I had to have cooperation with it. Now, I had to learn cooperation first. And believe it or not, that's what I'm suggesting for you. Because cooperation is one of the nicest things you can have. And I hope you'll want to know more about cooperation and actually how to do it, because that's what next week is going to be about. Next show. Certainly cooperation is beyond the ego child's mind that tells us to be afraid, be very afraid. The ego child's mind is also driving us for what we want but it is based on what we wanted as a child and not who we are and how we want to use this great energy that is unique to us in the world as our potential. When we are not cooperative, we go into a pattern. It's actually a pattern of living called the seeker to feel good. And this is someone who runs around trying to feel good all the time, trying to find people and environments and stuff that makes them feel good, safe, and momentarily happy. But the word momentarily is a good one, because the seeker to feel good issue never lets the person really know themselves. And it never lets them really be at peace and find that peace with who they really are. So their overall lives are just not that happy. Oh, I hear a lot of people describe this in various ways. And sometimes they say, I'm empty. Sometimes they say, I settled. The fact is, they're just simply going from one way of being, hopefully, to another, which makes it a lot easier. But the seeker to feel good issue doesn't let you find the peace within. That's the real base of the happiness that we're talking about today. So in their overall lives, they're not happy. You understand? So they get a short-term gain at the sacrifice of a long-term experience of living. Hi, Patrick. Oh, my. Patrick, write me on my email. I would love to do that. He just invited me for a beer. I think that would be so fun. This is an old friend of mine that I'm quite fond of. Okay, going back to our subject. So the seeker to feel good has a lot of little moments because they're trying to reach for their happiness. But as I said, this is based on happiness being a goal and not a reveal. You understand? So we've got to get our thinking right. The happiness that you seek is a reveal, not a goal. Because when it's a goal, when happiness is sought as a goal, because that is a shallow effort, if you will, the results are shallow and never satisfying. So we are wanting to change our thinking, first and foremost, that happiness is not going to be a goal. It's a reveal. It's an evolvement. You see? So what do we do about all this? Well, we're going to talk about learning to be cooperative next week. But we're going to talk about some other things that make up happiness this week, trying to inspire you to be cooperative. You all will have to know if it's working. So let's talk about the elements of happiness today in the long term, okay? Number one is the cooperation that we're talking about, but it is also movement. You've heard me say this before. Hopefully I'm going to say some things you haven't heard me say before, or certainly not in the context that we are talking about today. One has to move mentally, physically, and spiritually, which, by the way, whether you consider yourself a spiritual person or not, means energetically. When I talk about the spiritual body, it's the energetic body. Those things are interchangeable. So don't turn away from a valuable teaching because of the word God, because of the word spiritual. These are things that we learn when we're children, and sometimes the way it's taught hurts us. But the fact is, you're energy. The whole world is energy. And we're in the process right now, you and I together, of learning how to work with it in a deeper and more profound way in order to be happy. All right. Movement is very important to this process. You can't have the happiness that you want if you're not moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. In other words, we have to think outside the current box we're in. You've got to realize that, and I think that happy people often do, that even if something's happening to you externally, it looks like it's happening externally, there's been some internal movement that's created that. You've thought different thoughts. You felt different feelings. You might have done something physically, called the right person, turned the corner and saw the house you want, anything else. You might spiritually be open to receive God's gift in a larger way. Notice that I'm, by the way, not saying change your brain here. The mind, be it the egoic child's mind or the highest self mind, is much bigger system than the brain. And I was looking at this online right before our show today, and ShareCare said, your brain is part of the visible, tangible world of the body. Your mind is part of the invisible, transcendent, tangible world. No, I'm sorry. Your mind is, I should just put on my blooming glasses. I can't see. The mind is part of the invisible, transcendent world of thought, feeling, attitude, belief, and imagination. Okay, well, I will add also a couple of things. I think I would put intuition into that mix, and I would probably say a lot more. Whatever makes you think out of the box. And I don't even have words for it. It's part of that mix. Now, what happens when, I want to go off the subject a minute, but of course it's not. What happens to a little rabbit when it's afraid in the bush? Let's say there's a predator nearby. The rabbit hunkers down, right? It doesn't move, keeps its energy extremely contained. It pulls in, trying to be invisible. It breathes shallowly, all part of that system of being invisible, right? And people are no different from this. We have all learned to be afraid or anxious in our childhoods, and now it's this vague fear that permeates everything we say and do and feel. So we have to move out of that fear. We have to learn to move out of it if we're going to be really happy. Really happy people have less fear and anxiety than other people do. What they feel is, and remember, if you've listened to other shows, you know I often use an exercise I call the threshold exercise. The threshold exercise is that we start with energy in the ego child's mind, but that energy, once we do this walk up our awareness ladder and become more and more and more conscious, goes across a threshold into our highest selves where we're really playing in the fields of our excellence, and it becomes something else. So the same fear and anxiety that you have becomes your excitement, your curiosity, and your mind spinning with ideas that has to do with your potential. Now, both of these things, whether we're using something for fear or whether we're using something in the highest self, both of these things are uses of energy. But we've got to become very aware of how we're using our energy while we are building up the momentum and the habit of being in the highest self most of the time. All right, number 2, Happy people, generally speaking, have disciplines. Now, I'm not talking about routines. Routines get you in a rut, and ruts cause depression. And what I mean by that is you do the same thing every single day. You think the same thoughts. You do the same. You have the same feelings. You do the same things physically. You do the same things spiritually. You're not out of the box at all. Now, discipline is simply a way that you have of taking care of yourself, knowing what you can eat and what you can't eat in terms of making yourself feel good, knowing how much alcohol to imbibe, if in any at all, right? Knowing that you are, how much sleep you need to get, having a discipline about waking up at the same time every morning, going to bed, generally speaking, at the same time every night. It is what your true nature needs to take care of yourself. That's your discipline. And as I said, it's very different from a routine. Something else that is true with happy people who know what their discipline is they are not afraid to investigate the new. Now, the reason I'm saying that is I want you to see that's very different from having a routine, isn't it? Because in a routine, you don't investigate anything new. You don't think new thoughts. You don't learn anything new. You don't have new feelings. You don't learn something new spiritually. You don't do physically new things. But that's not true of happy people. Happy people are always learning. They're talking to people. And I think even though we are talking about happiness right now, I remember a parallel story to this. Several years ago, a study was done on lucky people. I'm sure you can find this book out there. And I remember, I have not read this book, so I can't speak to it and quote it. But I remember they did an exercise where they put, I don't remember what, $100 bill, a $10 bill, some denomination of bill, on a door sill of a cafe. And they interviewed people before they went into this cafe whether they felt like they were lucky or not. And they just asked, do you feel like you're lucky? Some people said yes, some people said no. And then they observed the behavior. The lucky people saw the bill, picked it up, and they went and sat in a place where they could talk to other people, like the bar in this cafe, instead of in an isolated table. But the people that considered themselves unlucky, generally speaking, did not pick up that bill for whatever reason and went and sat at an isolated table. Guys, we're all part of this community called life. Our blessings come through us essentially, and then it's played out through other people. It's really important that you don't isolate from the experience of being a participant in your life, and that you change your mindset and start considering yourself lucky. I think that's part of happiness. Okay. Pardon me. Cup of tea. Up here where I am, we have a lot of goldenrod out right now, so everybody is going blah, 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 coughing a lot. Okay, it's all blooming. Hi, Poppy. So glad you're with us today. All right, going back now to what else makes us happy. Number 3 is happy people have a tendency to have made their peace with the past. Look, all of us emerged from whatever childhood we had with issues. It's the unaware person that says, I don't have any issues, because, oh, yes, you do. Everybody does. That doesn't even mean you need to have come from a bad childhood or an unfortunate childhood or anything like that. It just means that we have distortions that we in our own mind have created, and rightly so, because we saw everything as a child from a very self-centered, narcissistic place, as children are supposed to do. Right? That means that we have a lot of assumptions about us, about our worth, about our childhood, about our God, about our relationship to other people, about other people themselves. We have it all distorted based on appearances that our child's mind created so that we would understand our world and we could survive, right? But consciousness is about realizing those things are distortions indeed. Some of them are. A lot of them are. And we have to look at those and do something else. These issues keep us fearful. And this comes out in us as restlessness, inability to concentrate, focus ourselves, upset, anger, crippling loneliness, anxiety, desperation, jealousy, oh, just name it. If it's fear-based, it can come out any way at all. And all of this is pretty much based on an emotional immaturity, because it isn't the problem that happens to us. Hello, Keisha. Oh, it's wonderful to hear your name again. I haven't heard it in a long time. I'm so glad you're with us. All this is based on not the fact that we shouldn't have problems. It's based on how we handle them and how we look at them. That has a lot to do with happiness. We're going to talk a lot about that. But first I want to go in a different direction. And this is all based on having peace with the past. You can't force people to take what you have. I've noticed for years fathers and mothers becoming very impatient and unhappy with their child when the child rejects what they've got. You see? And sometimes a person that's emotionally immature is going to project that even onto their partner and try to control what the partner does because they want to give them, I miss you too, Keisha, they want to give the partner what they have that they feel keeps them safe. But, you know, we've all got our own journey, don't we? It's called control, and we often get control mixed up with trying to teach something, and we're trying to teach something out of our own need to be somebody, need to have value when we don't feel very valuable. And instead of looking at that and dealing with this and helping ourselves and being, by the way, content and satisfied, knowing what we know, we try to impose it on other people. That doesn't feel very good. And it doesn't create the best relationships. Now, I want to go to relationships because happy people know how to do relationships better than unhappy people. And let's talk about what I mean by that. The only way we know how to do relationships is the way our mothers and fathers did relationships. Do you understand that? That's really all you know about how to have a relationship until you know something else. I want to say one of the things that I find very powerful about consciousness work is the ability to create your own and a brand new model of love. I think that's very powerful. But to do that, we've got to break out of the box of our thinking. We've got to be able to see what we're doing that's old and make a decision to do something else once our mind opens to what we could do that is more life-enhancing in terms of relationships. I want to put on the table concerning this that happy people are givers, not takers. We all, in our ego child's mind, run around trying to get as much as we can because we feel empty from our childhoods. The irony here is that we won't give it to ourselves. We want it from other people. Guys, that's not going to make you happy. We have to give it to ourselves. I'm very serious about that. That's the only thing we've got to do. It's nice that we get kudos or love or attention from other people. But the thing that sustains you is for you to know who you are and that it's precious because it's the only thing you've got, right? And that it's all right and that it is of value just from the sheer existence in the world. Now let's do something with it. You see. And happy people are givers, not the takers. They have transcended that taking part of them to really contribute. And the happiest relationships are those when you get to givers. The interesting thing, the reason I made that mistake is once in a while, Michael and I, my husband Michael, will fall into the trap that we have gone over the line in giving and we're exhausted and we grouch at each other, right? Do you understand? It was us that was responsible for going over the line. We forgot to say, oh, sweetie, I just can't do that right now. I'm tired. This doesn't happen very often. But when it does, you bet the grouch comes. Why? Because the grouch is normal when you've gone over the line. You've got to know yourselves and allow yourselves to be the givers that you are. I do think that concerning what we're talking about right now, a big part of this is knowing how to present yourself and how to talk about hard subjects in a loving way. I talked to someone this week who described his family as the rude family, and that he is very, very rude. And he indeed has some relationship problems because of it. If you realize that that's what you learned, dear hearts, it's just what you learned. And the nice thing about learning is that we can unlearn it and do something else. But we can't do something else until we unlearn it and see what we're doing. And to do that, you have to be cooperative. We're back to the beginning. Okay. People that are happy and people who are in this higher mind that we're talking about are emotionally available as well. They're not afraid of emotion. They can go where? They're not even afraid of their own anger, you see? But we must realize that our anger really is about 10% what's happening right now and about 90% what happened back there. So we're back again. If this talk today with you feels like it's going in a lot of different places and all comes back on itself, that's true. I'm trying to describe something that is, if you will, a tapestry. It is. It's a tapestry. All these are threads that weave and hold everything else in place. Do you see? Just listen. Your cells get it. Because happy people are emotionally available or not afraid of emotion, can open to that, and can usually talk about it in a life-enhancing and loving way, even if it's a hard subject. There are ways they can get to solutions more quickly, to feel better within themselves. You know, Michael and I laugh sometimes if we have had one of those yin. You know, I'll go in with him or he'll come with me and say, are you still mad? And the other person will say, you know, I want to be mad. Give me 20 more minutes and I'll be, you know, I'm going to be mad, real mad for 20 more minutes. And then I think I can drop it. Guys, it's just not the end of the world unless that's our mindset. And if that's our mindset, that's the ego child's mind. And here's the irony about relationships. You need to do this even if your partner can't. I have a wonderful quote, which is, happiness is not the absence of problems, it is the ability to deal with them. Steve Maraboli said that. I don't know who Steve Maraboli is. I'm going to have to check that out. But it is. It's the ability to know you can get through everything. One of the reasons that I was so interested in Michael as a life partner was that I knew we could get through everything. I know him enough to know that we'll figure it out. Okay. Number 5. Oh, we did number 5. Number 6. Happy people are most happy when they find, in quotes, divine purpose. However, I can't tell you how many people that are starting out in their 20s that say, that's what I want divine purpose. Well, you can't have it. That's it. Sorry, can't have it. You can't have it until you get more information, until you go on some sort of journey, because divine purpose is revealed when you're ready to have it revealed. And the irony is, I think when you go on the conscious journey, the last thing you'd ever describe yourself as is conscious. You would never say other people are unconscious. You just don't do that. You'd never say, I'm in divine purpose. You just know you're happy. I think those of you that know my story know I started out years ago as an actor. And then I went into directing. And then I went into teaching acting. And that evolved into teaching business people. And that evolved into teaching a spirituality for people that are creative and for people in business and all sorts of things. It's an evolvement. Am I doing my divine? But I don't know. I know I'm listening. And I know I want to continue to listen. And I hope you will too. Because it brings incredible rewards. It's about going on the journey, you know. But you see, I'm sure you're seeing by now, it can't be a goal. Consciousness is not a goal. That's ego, child's mind driven. It's something that evolves, that you do because you are doing it. Happy people, and this is number 7, are not Pollyannas. Do you remember the story Pollyanna? It's the little girl who saw everything in the rosiest light. It was a book by Eleanor Porter. And my mother handed me that book when I was young. And, you know, while it's a lovely little story and still being picked up as a classic on PBS and things like that, I'll say I'm not sure it's teaching us all the right things, because Pollyanna was a very sad little girl, and she just created this rosy thing on the top to deal with it. And while that's a wonderful thing to show children, that's a way to deal with things. When we reach our age, whatever that age is, but when we come into adulthood, it's damaging for us to keep that with us, because there's something bigger than feeling bad and feeling good. You know what it is? Being real. Being real. That's where we've got to get to first before we can feel great. We've got to be real. And we've got to honor our realness. We've got to find out who this person is and learn to work with this. Happy people do accept reality. reality is not that life is a bowl of crap, nor is it, it's wonderful, life is just so wonderful, nothing ever bad happens here. Neither one of those are true. Those are both fanciful states. And if you're driven to find that fantasy, it's its own reward. You're not going to be much happier in reality. And of course, that's what this show is about. We're talking about trying to be real and happy. Real and happy. We won't be happy any other way. We have to accept reality. We have to look at the truth. Most people in their childhoods have learned to avoid those two things. They avoid them in all sorts of different ways, but avoiding them, they do. There is an avoidant personality. I urge you to look at that, and if that's you, just simply say, that's me, and see what you're avoiding, and realize there might be some better strategies now than avoiding. Everything can be handled. Everything can be resolved. But you have to be willing to drop some of the old ways of doing things, see them clearly, see them that they really haven't given you anything. They're not responsible, those old strategies, for keeping you alive. That they are responsible for you understanding your life as the child would understand it without the depth of knowledge that's available to you now. I do think that in the journey itself, after learning to be real and seeing what you really think and what you really feel, that you have to learn, by the way, positivity. I think that one learns positivity by the first step is seeing how negative we all are. You have to see how negative you are.